Warhammer 40,000 Darktide has been out for a little more than 2 weeks, and you're probably now catching up to the majority of other people in the game. You maybe have a level 30, you may be working towards your first level 30, maybe you've maxed out all 4 character classes. In this video today, I want to go through some of my advanced tips of things that I've learned across my 100+ hours of gameplay of the game that will help you in getting a little bit better. There's a little bit of an edge. Now, not all of these are going to be groundbreaking. Some of them you might already know. Some of them might be a little bit of a tweak of information you know. Hopefully you'll get something from this by the end of the video. As always, guys, make sure that you like, comment, and or subscribe to help me out. It helps out any content creator that you watch in a huge way. You can also jump forward to any portion of the video that interests you the most using the chapters in both the timeline and the description. Lastly, I stream Darktide on my Twitch, which you can find linked in the description below. Go ahead and give that a follow if you want to jump in on some fun Darktide action on twitch.tv/ItalianSpartacus. But let's get started here on my advanced tips for Warhammer 40k Darktide. Another note on weapons here is stockpiling everything. We don't necessarily know if we're going to be able to break these down to get crafting materials and what have you, because the crafting system is not fully implemented. By the time this video goes live, we'll have another portion of the crafting implemented into us that'll add perk tiers right here so we can see things. So you want to make sure you're stockpiling weapons that have the perk tiers that you want with the perks you want, and the blessings with the blessing tiers you want. Every time you look at a blessing, you'll see these little hash marks. This is a tier 2 Flesh Terror blessing, but this is a tier 3 Lacerate blessing. So these hash marks will give you a context clue as to which tier that blessing is. And since we don't know how you'll be extracting or swapping perks and blessings just yet, stockpiling everything since we have infinite storage is only going to be working to your advantage, because you can discard it once we know what stuff is and is not worth keeping. A big note here on item rating is that it is very important, right? This overall 430 is crucial, but the big thing you want to be looking for is this modifier field. In the current iteration of the game, whenever you buff up an item, it does say that it increases this modifier amount, but it's actually not being increased. And really you want to look for anything that is over 350, 380 is the cap in this section, but pretty much a good indicator of a solid weapon starts at 350 plus. 375 is probably the sweet spot here. But this then kind of equals points that are then distributed into these locations, so you can really look for a weapon that is particularly strong. The overall rating is, of course, a combination of the modifier amount, the perk, and the blessings. And every time you upgrade the weapon through the crafting system, it's going to increase by either giving it a perk or a blessing, depending upon if you're going from anointed to exalted or exalted to transcendent. It just depends. But really make sure you're looking at this modifier portion to try and get the best possible weapon that you enjoy the most. My last note here is about taking a look at the individual stats of your weapons and then looking at the intervals. So I'm going to go ahead and hover over the mobility on this Catachan or Catachan, whatever you want to pronounce it. I prefer Catachan because that's what I want to do. You can look at the dodge limit on this is 5 with 38% mobility. Now, right next to that dodge limit of 5 is a 2 sets of numbers in gray with brackets around them. That is the interval in which this stat can roll from 4 to 6. So why this is important is that you might take a look at a weapon on the item shop or whatever and think, oh, that's a terrible mobility roll. Take again a look at this weapon that I've upgraded. It's part of the bleed build, right? It's got Flesh Terror and Lacerate, and it's got a mobility of 38%. And I was like, man, that's actually kind of a crap roll. I'd rather have less first target. But let me show you a different combat blade. This one right here, mobility is 80%. Remember the dodge limit on that last one? It's the same here at 5. So don't look at these percentages and go, oh, I'm going to disregard that one. Of course, the distance and the speed is different. So those things are worth noting. I personally look at, for mobility, the dodge limit being the more important thing for me personally. So look at the intervals and make sure that the percentage point lines up with the breakpoint of an interval that you have in mind for a weapon you want to increase, to make better, to swap out perks and eventually blessings for, and what have you. Because like I said, I didn't realize that the breakpoint for dodge limit between whatever X% and 80% was the same. So just make sure you're taking a look at those intervals. Armored units are a big part of Darktide, including your maulers, your crushers, and all sorts of things in between. But you might just think to yourself, hey, I just gotta attack the weak spot. It's probably the best thing to do. Now, while you do get increased damage and there are crit chance increases for a weak spot and doing crit weak spot damage, it oftentimes can be better to just simply aim for weaker armored portions of the model. Take, for example, here the mauler. If I hit its head, I'm hitting a carapace armor. If I hit its chest, I'm hitting flak armor, and you can already see the difference of 2 damage versus 123. This might allow you to use certain weapons that will do more damage to flak versus carapace or the other way around. If I charge this guy up, swing at his head, I'm doing 782 damage. If I charge this guy up, swing at his chest, still doing 707 damage, and it's a much easier target to hit. So kind of keep these things in mind depending upon the weapons you're using to maybe decide how you want to best approach and attack every enemy in the game, because every enemy does have armor in different locations, allowing you to get different hits and different armor values depending upon what weapon you're using. We all know how the Zealot activatable works in giving you a nice buff to your damage with melee, but this also works for your range weapons and gives them a 100% penetration to armor. Let me show you an example here. So if I shoot this guy in the head with this braced autogun, doesn't do much damage. But if I aim down sights, press F, as long as that orange aura is up, I just completely rip through the armor on anything I'm shooting at. This is a great way to use the braced auto gun, the flamer especially, because the flamer also gets the benefit of being in that orange aura and cutting through things and doing more burn damage. Any of the guns that you want to use, the auto pistol is going to make them do a ton more damage to armor and help you burst them down quickly. With the advent of Darktide, we get stage reloads, meaning that the character will go through an animation to reload his gun, and if you switch weapons in the middle of it, they'll continue that animation once you go back to that weapon. You can kind of cheese this a little bit, though. You can kind of get around a little bit of the reload animation depending upon what gun you're using and how that animation works out. So how this works is, I'm going to shoot this gun, mess up that mauler, good lord. And in the lower right corner, you'll see my ammo, 2402999. And when I press R, it's going to drop to 000. As soon as that ammo amount replenishes to its max amount, we're going to switch weapons and then switch back. That will have canceled the rest of the reload animation and we'll be good to go to start firing again. So R. I swung my weapon to kind of interrupt it a little bit, but that's how you can kind of get around some reload animations. Now, as of the creation of this video, the bolt gun's reload animation is the same animation, or the end of it is the same animation as taking it out. So that doesn't really help you out too much with the bolt gun. But still, there are some weapons that you can cut out at least about a half of a second to a full second of reload in trying to get back and going quickly with getting your shots on target. Dodging is absolutely crucial in Darktide, and you'll be doing it throughout every single bit of difficulty. And if you're playing the lower difficulties, you should be doing it as fast as possible to build that muscle memory. But in the default settings for Darktide, jumping and dodging are both bound to the same key. And if you're dodging left and right, sometimes you kind of jump like I'm doing right here. This can kind of be a little cumbersome, and it can result in you getting hit rather than actually dodging a blow or dodging an attack from a mutant or a pox hound. So we're going to go into options here, over into key bindings. At the very bottom, we will see dodge and jump are both on the same key. I'm going to change my jump to left alt. Change it to something that maybe fits your muscle memory or something that's really going to be good for you. This is going to be really dealer's choice, but this will allow me to dodge with space and always dodge, as well as then jumping with alt when I need to. This is a really great way to prevent yourself from just getting hit unnecessarily, and think about it, you really only jump when you're trying to forge a ledge or go over something. Peril is a big part of the gameplay for the Psyker, and having it at 100%, it can be easily purged by holding down R, but at a, albeit slow if not cumbersome way, because you have to actually lock your character down to do so. But if you get your Peril all the way to 100% and you want a way to quickly purge it without holding down R or letting it slowly dissipate on its own, you can simply just switch over to your other weapon. This will allow you to be still effective and useful to the team while being able to kill things, dodge things, get away from combat, so that you can then switch back to your brain burst or your staff and kill things succinctly. Another quick note for the Psyker, and one you've probably already used, is the ability to charge up your Brain Burst without a set target. This is particularly useful if you're trying to get the penance done for the Poxhound, or you're trying to destroy any Poxhounds or TikTok dancers, also known as Poxbursters, before they hit your party. You hold down right click, you'll be able to charge your Peril, and then once it gets maxed, you can do a head burst. But keep in mind, you can see my Peril's still going up, so you don't want to just do this infinitely. You want to make sure that you've got a clear set trajectory of where you're going to let this thing go off, and you don't just simply charge yourself all the way up to 97%, let your Brain Burst go off and end up actually blowing yourself up. So do be careful with this. It is a pretty cool way to get things kind of timed and destroyed for you, but make sure you do not get yourself killed in the process. All right, you've come across a Beast of Nurgle and your friend has been eaten alive. Well, the Bull Rush, the activatable ability of the Ogryn, or a grenade from a veteran thrown at the mouth of a Plague Beast, will actually eject anyone who's inside of its stomach. This should also be a cue for you as an Ogryn to try to stay away from melee combat from a Beast of Nurgle so that you do not accidentally get consumed as well. One of the most deadly monstrosities of the game is the Daemonhost, and you can avoid Daemonhosts altogether when you find them, as you can just simply walk past them. They act very similar to the witches in Left 4 Dead. If you don't wake them or shine a flashlight on them, they'll just simply stay there. So be careful if you're using a Surge Staff, you don't want to wake them up. If you do aggro them, though, they will kill 2 members of the team before despawning. You can also just simply run away and keep the one member who's got aggro there to just kind of die, and then the Demon Host will despawn. If you decide to fight the Demon Host, an Ogryn can use their Slab Shield to infinitely tank one in the same way that they can with a Plague Ogryn. So this allows your team to melee the Demon Host to death. But keep in mind that Demon Host will corrupt the team up to 50% of their health with corruption. So even though you might win the fight, the entire party might have 50% of its health down. And if you have any Grimoire stacked onto this, it can be quite deadly. So really pick and choose your battles with Demon Hosts. It's worth noting that typically only one scripture or grimoire can spawn in each map segment. And a segment is whenever there is a transition or a point of no return. So basically you're walking through the map and you have to drop to a location, you can't go backwards. That's typically a map segment. There are some occasions where you will find multiple scriptures or grimoires in the same segment, but by and large, a general rule of thumb is that there is more often than not one scripture in that segment. So make sure you check those segments before you go to a point of no return. A big one here, make sure you are always dodging and listening for sound cues of people behind you. There's a difference between the sound cue of a melee attack behind you and someone shooting behind you. So just make sure you listen for those sound cues and dodging all the time, because you can dodge most las shots and autogun shots, and especially sniper shots. Listen for that sound cue, look for that big heavy laser pointer, the big gust of it shot about to hit you. Just keep your head on a swivel, because you can dodge a lot of the range damage that you're going to be encountering in difficulties 4 and 5, and it will keep you alive a lot longer in your games. This next one is about your Poxbursters, and I think this has now been kind of told quite a bit lately, but don't shoot Poxbursters, especially if they're near your team. If you can get them from range, go for it, but you should push them and then dodge backwards, as you can see here. This allows you to get some time to actually interrupt the Poxbursters explosion. You'll dodge them, you'll push them and then dodge backwards, and they will explode without hurting anyone. If you mistime this, it is kind of something that you're going to have to practice quite a bit. If you mistime this, it'll still hit you, but as you kind of get better with this, you should hopefully avoid your Poxbursters killing you. This one is a little bit of a big note, but a bug maybe more than anything. Whenever you are leaving the mission, you're going to your extraction point, make sure everyone in your team has been brought back to life. Otherwise, anyone who is waiting to be rescued or just completely dead as a casualty, they will not get credit for their penances if they complete the mission. So make sure you get them up. As of the creation of this video, there is a patch that's rolling out that's going to fix it for experience and credits, but it did not mention anything about penance credit or contribution towards missions completed, units killed, anything like that in the penances. So make sure you get up your bros before you extract. And with that, it brings our video here to a close. So hopefully you learned a little bit more about some things in the game. Maybe it was the Poxbursters, maybe it was the intervals for certain item values and how that percentage point actually creates breakpoints for those intervals, whatever it is. I hope you pulled something away from this video. If you have a really good advanced tip that you want to deliver to people, let it be known in the comment section below. Maybe you want to talk about the fact that Ogrins carry things faster than every other class because of their huge size. Let that be known. Share as much information as you can. There are some tips that I definitely missed in this, like say the boss level monsters at the end of a level, like an assassin mission. Using melee, you kill them faster. There's a bunch of other little things that you can definitely learn. Make sure you're pouring through other YouTubers, other Twitch players, other Twitch streamers, Reddit posts, forums. There are tons and tons of PSAs and fun information out there for you guys. But as always, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.